Well, welcome to the Debian Games BoF. For those who are new to Debian, joining this weekend, a BoF stands for Birds of a Feather. The idea is that people with a similar interest come together to work on certain problems or specific areas in Debian. So we don't have many people from the gaming team here today. Who do we have? We have Phil Morrell, and that's basically the two of us in this call at the moment. If anyone else wants to join, poke me high voltage on RSC, and I'll send you a link to the Jitsi call. If anyone else wants to join as well, it's completely open. If you have any questions, you can ask on the Etherpad or on RSC. Just prepend your question with question in capital letters, and we should be able to answer your question. So since we don't have many people of the gaming team in this call yet, maybe some will join later, maybe they won't. I thought in the meantime we'll just talk about what the games team is about and how it works in Debian, how you can get involved if you want to. Because what we've seen this morning so far already is that there's quite a lot of work to do in Debian and lots of things still needing to be packaged that's not packaged yet. I'm just doing a quick check that my sound is okay. Yes, okay. So let's start with what we have in the pad. So the purpose of the Debian Games team is to coordinate and share common problems and collaborate on maintaining the packages in Debian. So we do that in a system called GitLab, which hosts a whole lot of Git repositories for us. Our Git instance is called Salsa, so you get that at salsa.debian.org. And here you can find all our projects. There's quite a lot of them. We have about 95 members in the team, and about 50 people are active on the mailing list, or at least were during the last year. And can I see how many packages we have here? Not, but I think I have a QA page somewhere, and here we can see how many actual packages we have. So that's 462 packages inside the Debian Games team. They're in various shapes. Let me just maximize this window a bit so that it fits. And we can see that actually the games team are doing pretty okay. There's very few RC bugs. Most games are actually up to date with the upstream versions. There are a few that are minor version or two behind, but for the most part, the Debian Games team keeps up quite well with their package load. But more contributors is definitely welcome, and it would be nice to work on all the smaller bugs that exist in the packages too, and obviously get all the huge pool of extra software out there packaged in Debian properly. What else did I have in the pad? So yes, if you want to get involved, there's also the hash Debian Games RSC channel, also on the same network that we're doing the DebConf RSC channel on. And let me get the wiki page up. I think all the contact details are on there too, so you can bookmark this if you want to find out how to join it. There's a few other details there as well. So what else can I tell you right now? Oh, discussions and questions. Okay, cool. Let's see. I think Phil added that. Some stats. These were the stats for the mailing list, I guess, right? Cool. And I pressed on the wrong button. Yeah, let's talk about backports. So in Debian, we have a backports repository, so we can also take games that are not yet in a stable release, and once they make it into testing, we can also upload them to backports so that users of stable Debian systems can use those. So this is also a nice area to work in to make sure that that users of stable desktop releases can also play games that have freshly been packaged in Debian. Okay. Okay, so there's a question that is
I can take that one, maybe.
Do you want to take that one? Okay. Should I read the quick? Yes, go ahead.
Okay. So the question is, can you talk a little bit about packaging games with non-free artwork but free source code? So that's basically how I got started in the games team. So I found it really helpful for the found it really supportive, basically, because games is kind of like an odd little side bit of Debian that doesn't seem to see a lot of attention, but I enjoy it. So yeah, so as the question said, there's a section in the repositories for contrib, and that's for games where there's an engine available, but there's not really free assets yet. So, for example, a couple of examples there are Core6th, a theme hospital re-implementation, a bunch of different game clones like GemRB, which is a re-implementation of Baldur's Gate. Again, most of these have the requirement for you to go off and download your own art assets. So, for example, by copying them from the original CDs that you buy 10 years or so ago. So yeah, in terms of how you actually start packaging that, it's quite a lot of it is tracking down the copyright file information, so making sure that no one's accidentally included anything in the Git history from the actual proprietary game that it's cloning, really. But that's usually okay these days. Git helps with that, and there's various tools like License Check that will check those for you. When a new release comes around, just update the list of people who have contributed to it. Yeah.
So also,
it's been dropping in and out.
So also more about contrib. Contrib is for software that are free software, but it can't run without non-free bits. So maybe it depends on other non-free software or non-free content. So there's this game engine called ScumVM that runs all the Sierra games. And for a long time, that was in contrib because you could only run the old proprietary Sierra games with it. So because it was a piece of free software that relied on non-free software to be useful, it was in contrib. But then let me share this tab. This is Flight of the Amazon Queen. Someone wrote a free game for Scum engine. So therefore, ScumVM became useful on its own using only other free software, and then it could be migrated to main. So that distinction between contrib, main contrib, and non-free comes with those levels. So contrib is for free software, but that relies on non-free software to be able to work. I think between the two of us we covered that question. If there's any more questions, you can just pop it up.
So yeah, I popped a question there from Stefan in his talk was talking about there isn't a standardized category for highlighting utilities in the .desktop files. So yeah, he mentioned maybe we could have a utilities section under the subsection under games, or I was thinking some of them would fit into settings because they're all around like your mouse configuration tools and things. So yeah, I guess what do people think it should be?
The mouse one is interesting because it's not even that game specific. You might have that mouse and use it in the office and have a completely and still need that package. Okay, so I'm going to look at the sponsorship request section for a bit because we have a bit of a backlog for stuff that needs sponsoring. Sponsoring is a process of if someone is working on a package but they're not yet a Debian developer, then they can file a request for sponsors bug, and someone who is a Debian developer can review the package and upload it. So that's also why we want more contributors in the gaming team, so that they can eventually become a Debian developer and then sponsor more of these packages. So I think Stefan Lacknet is probably the one on his way to becoming a Debian developer next within a team. And, maybe he can help out with these as well. So I saw Starfighter on the list before as well. Let me actually open up one of these. Maybe we can actually review a package or two. I don't know. Because the G overlays are new packages. Oh, you mentioned hardening NoPy. So I see this with a few of my packages too, even though you have the hardening enabled. I think some packages give false positives in Lentian with this because it can't be hardened, and there's nothing to harden the function, and then Lentian detects it as that the hardening was not done. But I'd actually want to double check that before actually sponsoring this package. So I'll come back to this one another time. Lutris is a big and complicated one. I'll do that offline. Let's look at Mango HUD. It's nice that Mentors actually gives you an overview of the Lentian results of a package. So also to give you an idea, if you're not familiar with Debian, we have this website, mentors.debian.net. It's a place where contributors can upload packages, and then Debian developers can give it a review and say whether it looks good or not, or give some feedback of things that needs to be fixed. And we have this tool called Lentian that analyzes your package, that tells you about things that need to be improved or things that need to be fixed inside it. And this is kind of some of the outputs that you get from it. So all of this actually looks good on the surface. Usually I do this in a terminal, but since we're streaming and and I'm sharing only this window at the moment, let me open this in on Salsa, so that we can actually take a little bit of a deeper dive inside what this packaging is. So usually I'd start taking a look at the Debian directory, because that's where all the interesting stuff is. We check that everything is actually compliant. I just look at literally every file and see that it's fine. We usually want 3. Quilt is a patch system that we use, and version 3 is the Debian package format that we do all new packages in. There's some older ones too, but we're trying to move away from them. Upstream contains, some metadata. And I don't usually go check these. I just check that they look more or less right, which they do. There's a readme.debian, which can be a bit of a red flag, because that sometimes means you had to do something weird in the packaging. So let's see what they say. Upstream includes a file, include nvml.h, which is probably Nonfree. Oops. However, upstream offers 2 tables, one with this file and one without it. In Debian, we will use a DFSG variant of the upstream tables. Okay, that sounds good. If one wants to use NVIDIA's machine learning library, it's as simple as adding the dev package to the build dependencies and change. Okay, that seems all very reasonable enough. So DFSG stands for Debian Free Software Guidelines. It's kind of our whole philosophy and way that we do things in Debian. So also, if you're new to Debian, this is an interesting page to, not the one I was looking for.
Social contract, I think.
Yeah, social contract will give it to me. Been a long week, I can't even type anymore. And I should obviously say Debian social contract, because we're not the only ones who have invented something called that. So yeah, I'm not going to read through this now, but also if you're new to Debian and interested, this is kind of important. So where most projects or most products have EULAs, end users license agreement, that add more restrictions to the software, what Debian does is we have a contract where we make some promises to our users, because we actually really care about our users, not just some marketing thing. And there's some items here that we're governed by, and this is the DFSG part that stands for Debian Free Software Guidelines. So usually, if a piece of work has some parts that don't comply to this, we take it out of the upstream tables and append DFSG to it to indicate that we had to make that upstream table DFSG compliant. So These were written a few years ago with the idea to work around some practical problems that existed in the software world at the time. And amazingly, it's to the test of time. I think the biggest thing that probably got added or complicated above this is patterns, which we don't actually cover quite well in this. But it's still a very relevant document and worth reading sometime just to be familiar with it if you'd like to get involved with Debian. Okay, we can close that. I'll close that. Okay, so that was that file. Changelog should be basic, just one entry. Specify initial release, which ITP it's closing. So the ITP stands for intent to package. So in Debian, when you want to package a new package, you have to file an ITP bug in our bug tracker. The idea with that is so that two people don't work on the same package and duplicate work. So before you want to go ahead and package something, you should ideally go look if there's an existing ITP for that and if someone else has already started the work. So let me see what one of those look like. There's a link there. Am I sharing this? Yes, I just wanted to double check. So this is what the ITP bug looks like. You specify who's going ahead with the work, what the package name is, the intended version, who wrote the original software, where to get it from, what the license is, programming language it's written in, and you give a short description and a long description. And usually towards the end of it, you say where you want to maintain it as well. Like, for example, if you want to do it in a team or by yourself. Go back a bit. So then the biggest one is the control file. Control and copyright are usually the big things files where things can go wrong, because this is where all the magic happens. So in Debian, we have this concept of source packages and binary packages. So the source package is what we're actually looking at the moment. It's the upstream source code and the Debian packaging together that actually generates the .deb files that gets included in the archives and that you would typically install in your system. So this section above here is called the source section, which explains how to build what's needed to build a package. And then after that, you'll see the binary packages listed. So this is what's called a single binary package. It only builds this one binary package called Mango HUD, but one source package can also build multiple binary packages, because sometimes you want the data to be in a separate package, sometimes you want the documentation to be in a different package. So that is how you do it. You'd add more binary package sections here. So section is games. That looks good. Prot is optional. We pretty much use optional for everything these days. In the past, we also used extra, but that distinction has gone away. So maintainer is Debian Games Team, and uploaders is Stefan Lacknet. Sometimes we do it the other way around. The uploaders will be Stefan, with maintainer being Debian Games. I don't think we do this in Games Team, but sometimes the idea is that you want to show that you actually want to maintain it yourself and do all the uploads. And now and again, if the team wants to help out or if it's necessary, they can upload it, or they can ask permission if they want to upload the package. And other times, if the team is in maintainer, then they don't have to ask to get involved with the package. So here's all the build dependencies. These are dependencies needed to build the package. So these aren't necessarily what will be installed when you install a package on an eventual system. These are just needed in the build system to actually generate the binary packages. And often the build system might infer which binary packages are needed from the build. Depends as well. Rules requires root. This is a line that tells us whether this package actually needs root to be built. Because more and more we don't want to do stuff as root. So this makes it nice for build systems that are able to build as a regular user without having to escalate to root. Then there's Debian standards version. So in Debian, we have this thing called Debian policy. And we just bumped up to Debian policy 4.5.1 about 2 days ago, I think. So Debian has a huge amount of rules and policies and guides on how a package should work. These seem a bit cumbersome when you first start out packaging, but they actually are very helpful and ensure a lot of quality within Debian, because we don't want upgrades to break. We don't want cases where you install a new package and it tries to overwrite a file from another package. There's a lot of things, hundreds of things that we try to take care about to make sure that the package is good quality when you install a Debian package on your computer. And these policies keep changing slightly now and again. So you can see 4.5 was released in January this year and 4.5.1 in November. This is kind of actually quite a big gap between two versions. I think last year we had a bunch shortly after each other and we had to keep bumping it. But this checklist is quite useful because when a new version when you update a package from, say, version 4.3 to 4.5, you can use this checklist to check if there's anything in that package that needed to change to actually make it standards compliant with the newest standards version. And usually there's few of these that are actually always relevant, so you start picking them up after you've updated a few packages. You remember, oh yes, I updated this for that package, I should do that for this one too. So it becomes easy to follow once you've got enough policy in your head to build that pool of knowledge. So that's what that line is about. Then you specify where the upstream homepage is. Often it's a GitHub or GitLab repo site or page, and then where to browse the source and where to browse. This is not the source, this is the packaging. So this is exactly what we're browsing now in the web browser, and where to git clone it from a public repository. Usually we'd use the git URI when working with the packaging, because then you can push easily as well. I don't think we can HTTP push to Salsa. Okay, and then to the binary package details, we'll build a package called Mango HUD. It will go into section MISC. Architecture is any. So there's you can specify whether it should be built for one specific architecture like AMD 64 or i386, or you can say any, which means it will be built for all the individual architectures. But there's a confusing part as well, because if something is architecture independent, you would call it all. So sometimes as a new packager, you do get confused between any and all. We know that this is any because that it will have to be built for specific architectures. We can kind of glimpse that from the dependencies that's needed. So
usually that's determined by what language it's written in. So often a game that's compiled from C will be architecture any, but if it's just written in Java, you can get away with architecture all.
Yeah, that's true. Although there's some Python packages that I maintain that have some C code with them as well, and because they ship some C code as well, they get architecture any because it's a mixed package, and that can get confusing really quickly. But yeah. And then the description. I think the biggest thing of description is the extended one that's separated by a space after the description field. It has, I think it has to be more than 2 lines. I can't remember, but I know this is good enough that Lentian won't complain about it. So this control file looks good to me. Let's go to the copyright. That's the scary one. Because this is usually where things go wrong, and when you upload the package, the FTP masters say, no, you missed a whole bunch of stuff in the copyright file, and there's a bunch of copyright information in the source that's not in your copyright file. So usually what I do is in a shell, I do a grep -ri copyright, and that picks up a lot of files that have copyright declarations in them. But just from seeing this file already, it looks pretty good, because you can see that he listed the individual headers and C++ files copywriting their license. So just off the bat, this looks like it will be a fairly complete copyright file. I'll go check it again offline before I upload. I'm not going to do an upload during this session, but GBP, so you just get why am I so bad with words? Git build package to maintain this source in. So this just gives a hint to GBP of where to get the upstream and Debian branch from. So they're into different branches. Not much to review there. Debian rules. So this can get quite complicated with some packaging. Usually as a minimum, you can get away with these. That will automatically just call all the debhelper scripts that put the package together. And usually it does a good job at guessing what you need. Sometimes you need to specify a build system afterwards. This section, this export over here is because because it's a compiled program, so we want to do some hardening functions on there. And he had to do DH auto configure to enable use system Vulkan, and this is where you decide that's where the Debian comment came in from. So because we read it, we know that this is to enable the NVIDIA machine learning stuff because of the extra non-free stuff it would depend on, and to enable Wayland as well. So this packaging looks really good. I would sponsor this. I'm just going to check that check it offline too before I do that. This is just some Salsa CI stuff that's not really too interesting. And I usually check that the Debian watch file works as well. So what the Debian watch file works, this is kind of a, it contains the URL of where you can find the releases for the upstream source. Let me open that in a new tab. So here you can see the upstream tables for Mango HUD. So Mango at 0.5.1. If you scroll down, there should be lots of text. Maybe that's the first release days. Could that be? Let me see. There are more, but how it works is it looks at that page, and then it has some rule, and I'm not sure if that's even a regular expression or just some kind of glob, but it has some recipe to go pull all of those lines that contains a tar.gz, and then it can calculate which version. It can download the latest version or tell you when it's not the latest version that's that you have installed at the moment. And this is also where this column comes from in the Debian QA team, and how this page knows that some packages might be out of date within Debian. So that's a quick overview of what I usually do when I review a Debian package. I would also then build a source package out of this and build it within a clean chroot to make sure that all the right dependencies are installed, and then I'd run NTN on it just one more time before uploading to make sure that this package is actually in a good condition. But this particular package does look quite good. I think later tonight during a break, I'll go ahead and review it again and upload it. Let's see if there's any more questions in the meantime.
Yes, there's been a question about joining the team. So as far as I can tell, basically you just start doing some packaging work, usually on Salsa. So if you want to interact with one of the existing packages, then just fork the repo and make your changes under your Salsa account, and then just send a mailing list send an email to the mailing list and say, hey, I've done this, please sponsor it, essentially. You don't need to be a Debian maintainer or developer to join the team, so just any contributor. Obviously, once you've got a Salsa account, it's a lot easier for someone who is in the team to just give you full access to the Git history. So you can just make your changes in Git and then say, hi, I've got a new version. Please, can someone review it for me?
So yeah, anyone, like you said, anyone with a Salsa account can start contributing. You can also do what's called a merge request. It's like a pull request in GitHub, and anyone can sign up for Salsa, you can do so at salsa.debian.org, and then you can start contributing and submitting patches to packages or even completely new packages as well. And this is also a good way to become a DM or a Debian developer. This is how Stefan Lacknet, for example, became a DM recently. I'm just checking our RC. I see a bunch of highlights, and okay, no questions there yet. So yeah, so this is what all these RFSs is about. These are all packages that need to be reviewed and sponsored and uploaded. Not sure if there's anything games team we need to discuss at the moment, but if there's any questions on how to get involved or anything about what I mentioned so far, now is probably a good time to ask, unless there's anything else you want to also cover. Doesn't seem like there's any more questions. So what's this one? osgameclones.com. Okay, yeah, so that relates to the contrib. Let's see what that is about. The site tries to gather open source remakes of great old games in one place. Oh yeah, this sounds like a great project. Oh, and that also mentions CumVM that I talked about earlier. There's so many game engines. I mean, this is just the letter A in an alphabetical listing of of game engines. It's crazy. Last night I was looking for a few example game engines, and then there's like sites with the top 100 game engines of 2020, and I'm like, what?
Obviously, not all of them are necessarily playable.
Yeah.
But it takes time for the projects to get that far.
Can you imagine getting all of this package for Debian? This is quite, should be an insane amount of work. I guess most of them are free. Do they mention it here? Oh, there's licenses listed.
Yeah,
okay.
So you should be able to search the list for Open Transport Tycoon, for example.
Okay. Yeah, I see most of them are MIT, GPL3, GPL2, BSD4. Oh, 4 clause. Okay. GPL3. Yeah, so many free. So there's also something for someone to do to get involved with their gaming team. Start getting more of these packaged up. Well, also it's good work because it's how you can preserve games for future use, because some of the older games just get harder and harder to run, and the way you work around that is to run them under some sort of an emulator, but even that can become quite cumbersome after a while. So having free engines to run all these old games under is really nice for future generations, so that they can also enjoy these games. Is any free game welcome to be team maintained by the Debian Games team? As far as I know, yes. I used to ask permission every time I add a new game, or a piece of software, but lately, I can't remember what was the last one I added. I just added it and no one complained. And I think even non-free games are also okay. They just have to go into the non-free section or into contrib if they depend on non-free bits. What was I just going to say about this?
I guess the main question there is trying to get someone interested in sponsoring your upload.
Yeah.
So it's obviously easier to do that if it's a well-known game that they can go, oh yeah, I recognise that. Someone would benefit from that being in Debian.
Oh yes. What I was going to mention is sometimes people start with games because they think games is easier than other types of software, but sometimes games can get extremely complex, and also games tend to have more issues with, I mean, the upstream maintainers usually have the best of intentions to make it an open source game, but sometimes they accidentally include non-free font or a piece of graphics that comes from somewhere else that they aren't actually supposed to be using. And then you have some choices. You can either patch those out, which can be a lot of work, because maybe in a case of a font, you have to find a free font that looks similar and fits in the same dimensions as that non-free font, or find alternate graphics to use. What we usually do is we patch that out, and then we file a bug on the upstream bug tracker saying, look, we know you want to release this game as a free game, but you accidentally included these assets that you really shouldn't be distributing. We found this that looks like a good replacement. Maybe you should consider replacing that in your upstream repository as well. And usually within a day or two, depending on how active the upstream is, that gets fixed quite quickly.
Yeah, so just on that point, I wanted to highlight a recent game that I would like to get into Debian called MiniDebConf. But it turns out that, just as Jonathan was saying, that there's quite a lot of accidental complexity there. So the first step I did was say, oh, hi, I would like this to be available in Debian, and you can do that. You can check for that at wnpp.debian.net, and you can just search for a package name to see if someone is interested in it being available in Debian. So as a Debian contributor, I went ahead and said, yeah, I would like to look into this. But so the very first thing you do is try and compile it on Debian, and obviously I couldn't compile it because it needs all of these different Java packages that are not yet available in Debian. So if you scroll to the top of the RFP, there means request for package. So it's not necessary. So quite a lot of people just kind of ignore them, but I find them quite useful for documenting any kind of small progress I've made towards packaging, even if I'm not actually able to package the game yet. So here you can see it's a fix that's blocked by a different package. So that means that in order to get MiniDebConf into Debian, we need this libgdx in Debian, which is kind of a middleware that the game developer has chosen to use. And you can do the same dance again, and you can see I registered this and said, hey, we need this for MiniDebConf, and go, but that one itself is blocked. So you go to there, and you find ultimately it ends up being, depending on what turns out to be a new programming language, which is exactly what you don't want to find. So it's just an example of the complexity that can be involved in packaging games. Hopefully at some point soon, Kotlin will be available in Debian because other people will work on it, and then we can go back and start work on packaging the Java middleware and working back through the list, and then finally we'll be able to have things like MiniDebConf or Shattered Pixel Dungeon.
Yeah, it's quite amazing. Sometimes you look at a piece of upstream code and you see, oh, it's this tiny little program. It's like a few thousand lines. How hard could it be to possibly package this? And then you also go down this chain, and it turns out before you know it, you're maintaining, like you say, an entire programming language that you never intended to maintain, and end up getting thousands of bugs for it. And it just escalates so quickly. It's amazing.
But that's also what I like about the games team. So unlike quite a lot of the other teams, it's not focused on just one language. So you get introduced to all sorts of different fun things. Briar, yes, I've seen that on F-Droid.
Okay, so any final questions before we go? It seems like we can just about wrap up. Oh, I'm upstream other than license check and dependency check. What can I do to make packaging easier? That's a good question. Yeah, I think having a clear license file and making sure that all the assets you set are actually free and that your license is actually correct, that's already a big step, because as Debian developers, we hate doing work just to find out that there was some licensing gotcha, and we have to go through another round of submitting a package again. And that link is also good. The upstream guide, I think Paul Wise works on that a lot, or did at least. I think it's one of his projects, or it used to be. I forgot how comprehensive this is. Okay, so this is a very comprehensive guide on what upstream can do to And the first line already is what I mentioned. So yeah, that is important. Releasing a tab. I think using tools like GitHub and similar the last few years made creating a tag and a table for that quite a natural thing for developers these days. This is far less an issue than it used to be, because we had to explain in the past to developers, how to release an upstream table, and it's just so easy and natural these days. So this has become a lot easier. So yeah, I'm not going to go through all of this, but it does seem to be a good guide for what you can do as an upstream to make your software as releasable in a distribution as possible. And all of these apply to Fedora and Arch Linux and other distributions as well. So it's a good idea if you're an upstream to follow these. And it's mostly sensible as well, but sometimes it helps reading it and getting some tips and making sure that you actually are a good citizen on the internet when it comes to software. What would you consider more potentially complicated to package, a game or a library? Easy question. Libraries are difficult. They even when I see simple, there's some gotcha, and for many of them, you have to care about symbol files, which I don't like working with. I don't like working with symbol files at all. There's some helpers from the KDE team to help you with symbol files, but I still don't enjoy it. And also with libraries, you have to care about transitions. So that means when you update a library, all the packages that depend on the library also needs to get uploaded again to be rebuilt against a new library. So I would say library packaging is definitely for at least a little bit more advanced packages. So if you're just getting started with packaging, I would not suggest starting with a library because it's not necessarily extremely complicated, but it just makes stuff a bit more complicated for you when you're just getting started out. I would advise starting with any other kind of package than a library to begin with. Obviously, there's exceptions, but for the bigger part, they're not all that fun. Not to derail the discussion, but I've been through that. I was struggling with a certain software for packaging and ended up going down a rabbit hole of requirements. Yep, you're not derailing the discussion. Don't worry about that. You're just agreeing with us. Are there objective criteria on splitting binary packages, data, extra, etc.? Good question. Do you have any ideas on that?
I
think optional parts are nice to split off. Because then if you can, let's take Tux Paint for example, because someone has actually filed a bug against my package there to split it up into smaller pieces. Like at the moment, it installs an artwork, like it has stamps that you can place inside of your painting, and all the stamps are huge. I think it's something like 300 megs large. So some teachers have asked that it gets split off because they have old computers with small amount of disk space in the lab, so they asked that it gets split off into the butterflies and the birds and the animals and the flowers, so that they can install just the specific stamps that they actually want to use in their class. And on that note, some teachers also said that it inhibits the creativity if there's too many stamps because they use those instead of actually painting something themselves. I'm going a bit off the rail here, but yeah, that's every package is different, and sometimes you just have to decide on what the technical, how much can you actually split it on a technical level, and how much would actually be useful for the user.
A common separation there with games particularly is that you'll find even within even if you follow the recommendation to set aside compiled architecture-specific files from the generic can be installed anywhere, which we said was any versus all earlier. Even within those data files that can just be installed anywhere, as Jonathan says, you can split it up based on the architecture. And a common one in gaming is obviously you'll have often for network games, you'll have a client and a server, and also most files which will be used by either. So you'll end up with, for example, something. I don't think SuperTuxKart does this, but you would end up with SuperTuxKart, SuperTuxKart data, SuperTuxKart common, SuperTuxKart client, and SuperTuxKart server, all making your work as a maintainer more interesting, so that the user doesn't have to download the bits that they don't care about.
Yeah. Cool. It seems like we've covered quite a bit of what the gaming team is, and a bunch of introductory stuff for Debian, and maybe how to get involved for some people.
Please join us.
Yeah, please join us. We'd like that, and we're nice. We'll help you. We'll help you get started. Like Francisco and I think Stephen said earlier, sometimes you wait a bit for packages to get sponsored. We know it's kind of boring when you do a lot of work and then it sits and waits somewhere for someone to review it. But the idea is also to grow the team, get more Debian developers involved, and hopefully over time we can just get all these sponsorships getting moved faster. But with your help, it will happen.
As I said before, it's quite easy to just contribute even without going through any of the formal maintainership processes. Just find a bug and fix it in Salsa.
Yeah, sounds good. Okay, I guess that's it from us then.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot for listening, and enjoy the rest of the conference.